Hariom and greetings from a car in a parking lot in St. Catharines. In Canada, we have a radio program called The Debaters. I've mentioned this a few times to all of you. And it's two people who debate on a subject, and it's comedy. It's very funny. So I like to listen to this. And recently, one of the debates was on insects being the new food for humans. And so the person who was for this, and then there's another person who argues against this, the person for this was sharing that humans have broken every part of this planet. And so now they have to eat insects to fix the planet. And then he started to laugh. And his point is that humans won't change. That even when everything is being broken, still humans will not change their diet or their lifestyle, and so on. Shri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 3, describes humanity as a wheel. That everyone is to flow together, is to move forward together. And if you think of a wheel, I'm seeing it in a car right now. Imagine 3 wheels were moving forward and one wheel was moving in the opposite direction. Is that efficient? Is that effective? Is that even possible? Somehow, as humans, we're moving in the opposite direction of this wheel of the multiverse. Prthvi Sevasanga is a reminder to flow with the wheel of the multiverse. And more than a reminder, I feel it's an alarm. The reminders have been coming for decades. Now this is alarm mode. We are a community that is trying to transform what we're thinking about into action. Every one of you has always cared for the environment, and you did so in an individual way. In January of last year, we translated what we were thinking into action in a collective way. Hence our Prithvi Seva Sangha. And this is a community that's active. Though we may only meet once a month, we do have reminders, a reminder of our alarm every week. We have learning, engagement, support, transformation. For all of you who are new to this community, I welcome all of you, and I encourage all of you to go to our website so you can read our articles, you can watch the videos on different facets of environmentalism. And we care about each other, we care about you, which is why within Prithvi Sevasanga this year, we're mentoring other centers who want to be more active, other communities who want to be more active in environmentalism. So much so that this year, everyone who is actively sharing Prithvi Seva in their centers and communities, you will no longer be referred to by a name like Praveen or Lalita or Jagrati. You will be known as a Prithvi Mitra. What an awesome name. I would rather have Prithvi Mitra beside my name than having a business degree. So that's what we all are, Prithvi Mitras. Last month in our workshop, I had shared thoughts on Vedanta and nature. Vedanta means to know what's inside, specifically that you are part of a macro. You are the micro, which is part of the macro. And if you think of nature, when we think of Mother Nature, when we think of the oceans or the lands, that would be the macro then. So Vivek, as the micro, is part of the ocean. Factually, most of my body is made up of water, is part of the lands. We describe this body as Annamaya, filled with land, that which is going to go back to the land. And what's so beautiful about this, the more you know the micro, the more you know the macro. And vice versa. If I know water in Lake Ontario, is it so different than water in Lake Erie or Lake Michigan and so on? And so a summary action, because we can't just think about this, we have to act upon this, is to be in nature more. That's why I'm facilitating this workshop from a car. I'm in nature more right now. You can see the dark sky and so on. When we are in nature more, we learn from nature more. I had gone through different facets of nature that we can learn from. And if we start to feel that nature is our guide, is our guru, we will care for nature. Having oriented us to Prithvi Seva, to Vedanta nature, now I'm going to shift thoughts to dedicating to Devi. In our scriptures, there's a lovely and succinct message, Yajno Ve Vishnu, which in English means dedication is divinity. Please burn that into your personality. Dedication is divinity. Now think, what needs the most dedication right now? It is not travel companies, it is not our bank accounts, it's not our education systems. It is Prithvi, which means earth, and another word for this is Devi. Devi needs most dedicating right now. And if there's dedication, this has to be followed up with sacrifice. Dedicating is at a mental level, sacrifice is at an action level. So what can we sacrifice? Every one of us can give 3 things or facets to this multiverse: resources, time, and effort. How many of you are hearing this for the very first time? You've never heard this framework of resources, time, and effort before? Good. So then when I ask you for this, you're not going to resist this, correct? You can't plead ignorance. You can only plead negligence. See how I leverage your honesty? Resources. The sacrifice that we are going to make is to save $1 a day to offer to our Devi, to our earth. And this is going to be directed towards awe. towards charities, high impact charities that are contributing towards air, water, and earth. For those who are studying Bhagavata with me, today I consciously highlighted how Sri Krishna shares air, water, and earth are amongst the greatest purifiers that we know. So us supporting this is really us supporting purity. And accentuating this even more, how many of you signed the gift-giving pledge that we initiated in December? There's your honesty again. If you don't have your hand up, but see the opportunity now. When it's your birthday, when it's your anniversary, when it's your graduation, when it's your whatever, instead of asking for a gift of a notebook or a t-shirt or whatever you're going to get, ask people to donate towards awe. It makes complete sense. Then time. Our sacrifice is to sacrifice 1 minute a day to chant. So we're going to contribute, we're going to chant. To chant a mantra. The word mantra means that which protects the mind. The more you chant a mantra, the more you want to know about this, and it protects your own mind. Our mantra is Om Lam Prithvi Namaha. Say it with me. Om Lam Prithvi Namaha. Om Lam Prithvi Namaha. What this means in a very simplistic way, Om is infinity. It's a sound symbol for infinity. This gets expressed more as Lam. Lam is a seed. Imagine Om is the earth. What's more surface to the earth is a seed. This seed expresses as Prithvi. Prithvi means to Prithvi. Lam is the seed for this mantra, and then finally is Namaha. Today I was sharing that a responsibility for a grihasta. That means someone who's between the age of, let's say, 25 to 50, which is the majority of us. A responsibility of ours is to break down mama. What does mama mean? Tell me in the chat. Mama means mine. Exactly, mine is. Namaha is the opposite. Namama. Not mine. This earth is not mine to use. Rather, for me to serve. Om Lam Prithvi Namaha. And for all of you who engage in japa, let this be your mantra for the next 6 months. Last year, Om Ramaya Namaha. This year, Om Lam Prithvi Namaha. It makes you very conscious about your chanting. And finally, we can give our effort. We're calling this change. We're contributing, chanting, changing. We are saving $1 a day, a minute a day, and a thought a day. What is one of the most powerful forces in creation? A thought. Before this car was built, someone thought about building a car, correct? Before Prthvi Sevasanga, someone thought about this. A thought is most powerful. We are encouraging everyone to engage in change, but incremental change. Change a part of your lifestyle in a slow and steady way. If you take a shower at 40 degrees Celsius, reduce that to 39 each for 1 month, then 38, and keep bringing it down. If you go from 40 to 30, you're going to do it for 5 minutes and then done. You're not going to do it more than that. So what can you change? And as you do make these changes, share this with others. Tell your family, tell your friends. Instead of preaching to them about politics or sports, preach to them. about the environment. This is our dedicating to Devi challenge, to challenge us not to be complacent, to sacrifice $1, a minute, a thought every day, because our Devi needs this the most. With this third part of our orientation complete, I am encouraging our team, which is great, to continue sharing about our challenge and our awesome workshop that's about to start in a formal sense. Team?
Thank you, Vivekji, for the wonderful orientation to dedicating to Devi. I will now share a summary of what Vivekji already shared. All of you can see my screen. So this is the 3 C's: contribute, chant, change. So I'll just highlight a few details of, for example, for the contribution part, what we are requesting is when you save $1 a day, you probably use a use a small jar, something that you already have at your home. You can use that to collect the $1 a day. And if you don't have a dollar in a particular day, you can have a token dollar also. We encourage you to do this with your kids if your kids are there. Maybe pick a time of the day, maybe during your evening prayer time. As a family, do it, so that not only for you but for all the family members, this giving muscle gets stronger. And eventually, we encourage you to donate this to one of the charities. We have selected 4 charities, like Vivekji said, air, water, and earth, which is air, water, animals, and plants. And you'll also see that is spread across the 4 geographies of North America, Asia, Africa, and South America. So you can pick a charity of your choice, and you can contribute this money however frequently you want. Maybe you might want to do it once in a month or once in 3 months. It's up to you. Regarding the chanting, I think Vivekji clearly talked about the significance of the chant, and doing this for just 1 minute a day should be very doable, easy for us. Again, encourage that we do this ideally with the family, so everyone has the opportunity. The last thing, the one thought, right? Like, we are a community that is about manifesting the thought as action. So really, let's do this as one action a day for lifestyle change. Like Vivekji shared, I think this ideally can be an incremental change that you make towards a long-term lifestyle change that you have, that can serve Prthvi Devi. And once you do that, you can share this inspiration with your family, friends, and local community. Again, there are so many examples. I know in our community we have shared this, whether it is taking shorter showers or alternatives to plastics, or any of those changes that you think is meaningful for you and your family, you can implement it. And to facilitate us, all of us, inspiring each other and to follow through, we are going to have a form, a follow-through form, that we request each of you to fill on a weekly basis. If each of us can do this every Saturday, remember to do this on every Saturday. It's a very simple follow-through form which indicates how many days in the week were you able to do this. And please note that we are trying to do this dedication on a daily basis, not on a weekly, not on a monthly basis, but daily basis, so that we imbibe this lifestyle, right? That's the goal. By the end of 6 months, we imbibe this yajna lifestyle that Sri Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita, and in so many other places as well. The last thing is, we are going to facilitate a WhatsApp group. This again helps to share our inspiration, so that we can keep each other inspired with what changes that we are making in our life. So please, I think the links to the follow-through form as well as the WhatsApp group will be posted here. as well as you will get it. If you already haven't, you probably already have, but if not, you will get it via your email. So please do make sure to join both the WhatsApp group as well as to bookmark the follow through form so that you can do this on a weekly basis. At this point, if there is any quick question, we are happy to answer that, and then flow back into the topic for the day. Feel free to put your question in the chat. If we can't get it right now, we will get it at the end of this meeting. With this, I will transition over to the speaker of the day, Hamsa.
So it seems like a perfect time for us to be gathering as a group, looking at our individual actions, tracking them to see what collective impact we make and how we can take that beyond our community here into our larger scale systems like government and global issues. So with that, I'll just take a moment to share my screen and then we'll get started with today's presentation. All right, so last year, the title of this presentation was Planetary Health 101, but we're a year in advance now. We've all had an entire year of Prthvi Sevasanga. We are slightly more expert, so I think we've all meet the minimum requirements, the prerequisites for Planetary Health 201. So that's where we're going today, how individual change transforms into collective activism. So a quick look at our agenda for the program this evening. We'll start by revisiting planetary health, doing a quick review of what the subject is and how it relates to us and the work that we do as a community. We'll then look at a specific case study of the Chila Lagoon in Sri Lanka. For those who have read this month's article on the Prithvi Sevasanga website through Chinmaya Niagara, you will have seen a little bit about this example already, but for those who haven't, we'll take a quick look at this particular case study and how local grassroots individuals were able to inspire a nationwide movement. And finally, for our dynamics, we'll translate our individual concerns into activism. We'll have some questions and some active time to work together on how we all become activists. So first, revisiting planetary health. What is planetary health? So last year we discussed this, and I thought it would be best to watch a quick video from Howie Frumkin, who's a leading scientist in the planetary health field. So I'll just take a moment to stop sharing the screen, and I will go to the video.
This planetary health field, as it emerges, really is a breakthrough. It's a new way of thinking. It identifies correctly complex problems, puts human health and well-being at the center of things, but also embeds them firmly in the larger natural systems that we depend on. And you know, I'm talking about well-being as well as health because really what we want is for people to live good, fulfilled, thriving lives. And that includes health, but it goes beyond health as well. Good livelihoods, a sense of security and hope for the future, reaching full potential educationally. So really, it's the human condition that we're about here, not just about health in a narrow biomedical sense. All of that depends on the natural systems in which our societies are embedded. And that's true from the scale of neighborhoods and communities to the global scale. So if we don't have enough nutrients flowing, if we don't have enough energy available, if we degrade natural systems over time so that we may live well but our grandkids can't, all of those things undermine the ability for people to thrive and do well. And so the changes that we want to talk about in a planetary health context, changing ways of accessing energy, changing ways of using materials, changing ways of designing our communities, need to be grounded in the realities of what creates satisfying lives for people and help them thrive. Then we need to tell the story well. One of the terms that's been used constantly in this field is interdisciplinarity. I can't stress enough how important it is to work across disciplines. There is not a single important question facing humanity that can be answered within the confines of one discipline. So if you're a physicist, or if you're an economist, or if you're a sociologist, or if you're a physician, you need to be reaching outside your comfort zone, working with people from other fields to tackle these big questions. If you're not outside your disciplinary comfort zone much of the time, you're not being brave enough. The Planetary Health Alliance
All right. So I'll quickly go back to our presentation in a moment, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of key facets from that video that I think particularly relate to this community. One is that we want to center human health, but the human condition in all of what we do. So that means not just understanding that we want to be healthy, but that means being mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, and healthy as a community. All of those things are exactly related, are directly related to our relationship to the earth and what we take from it and what we give back to it. Also, the point of interdisciplinarity that Howie Frumkin brings up is really critical. In our community, I know we have people with all sorts of expertise. So this interdisciplinary aspect is really important. If you are an ecologist or an ecology fan, if you are interested in environmental science, if you are interested in natural resource economics and how we use the resources that the earth gives us, if you're interested in sociology and how people relate to one another, and if you're interested in your own health, and if you're a doctor, whether you're a parent, anything that you do has a relationship to how planetary health as a system works to improve our overall human condition. So I like to highlight that because I hope that it feels empowering. I always see interdisciplinarity as something that inspires me because I can see that wherever I am able to contribute, I have something to add to the conversation. And that's really critical to making sure we all see that value in our activism. All right. So before we move on, I wanted to give a quick moment for all of us to do some reflection. Can you think of a recent example in your life or in the news where planetary health came into play? So planetary health, as we've mentioned, is this interdisciplinary field that relates to how human activity on the earth affects our own health. So you can give everyone a minute to share in the chat if you have heard of any recent news story or anything that happened in your personal life that is a direct example of how something that relates to human activity on this earth comes back to impact human health, whether that's physical, mental, or spiritual. Yeah, and people have correctly identified the photo on the screen. The Ohio train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, is one of the most prominent examples right now of how our human need to transport really toxic chemicals long distances in order to make our current human systems work. When that goes wrong, can cause devastating health implications for those communities. Yeah, thank you, Zuiji. Mumbai just crossed air pollution levels above Delhi. Yeah, these are lots of examples that we see. Yeah, Pravinji, thank you. The crazy weather that many parts of the country are having right now, from Los Angeles having snow to where I live in Washington, D.C., being 80 degrees and sunny this past week. It's been wild, and that has a lot of effects on human health. So we're seeing planetary health playing out in our everyday lives as we're trying to make an impact. So what is an example of how we can connect those two things, what we're doing individually and what it means for a bigger system? That's where going the extra mile comes in, taking action and turning it into activism. To do that, we're going to talk about the Chila Lagoon case study in Sri Lanka. So the Chila Lagoon in Sri Lanka, you can see here on the upper right-hand corner is a healthy mangrove ecosystem. And this bottom left-hand photo is a mangrove that's been depleted and polluted. So one important thing to remember is that the mangroves that are in the Chila Lagoon in Sri Lanka are incredibly important to value for their ecosystem services. Ecosystem services means the kinds of benefits, the ecological and environmental benefits that nature provides to us. So as it says here, nature's contributions to people, making sure that we value nature in that way. Now, the impacts of the civil war that had gone on in Sri Lanka and a need for economic development from this really horrible poverty that was affecting the entire country deeply affected the mangroves in a very negative way. In the 1980s, shrimp farming was a really lucrative business, so a lot of people facing poverty started to invest. But what that caused is not only for domestic investment, but also international investment. And that many people trying to start shrimp farms in Sri Lanka force people to start to destroy mangroves in order to find small lagoons and pools of water where people could actually grow shrimp. Now, mangroves have a lot of benefits, one of which is to help mitigate natural disasters like tsunamis. So, more than 20 years later, when the 2004 tsunami hit Sri Lanka, a lot of the communities that had destroyed their mangroves to grow shrimp in order to make money lost more than they could possibly imagine because this natural protection was gone. So, all of a sudden, people saw that their economic needs, their need for money and a livelihood, was now causing a problem that'll destroy their livelihood. Tsunamis that would have otherwise had fewer negative impacts were really destroying villages. So it's important to recognize that this nature's contributions to people is really important to mangroves and how they affect our environmental and nutritional health. One, like I mentioned, they help mitigate natural disasters. Mangroves are a type of ecosystem where roots grow into and out of water, and so they help prevent the really negative impacts of high waves, forceful winds, etc. They also sequester carbon. So, carbon sequestration is a process in which plants are able to hold carbon in their roots and in the soil instead of releasing it into the air. And mangrove systems in Sri Lanka can hold as much carbon as is emitted by millions of liters of gasoline. So, this is a really important ecosystem to preventing carbon dioxide from getting released into the air. Next, they provide an ecosystem and wildlife sanctuary for critical species like fish, crabs, and other species that are nutritional food sources that are not invasive or negatively affecting the ecosystem, like shrimp farming. So the thing is, a lot of incredible community members in the Chilog Lagoon community realized that mangroves were this essential. But when they first saw shrimp farming and all the negative impacts, they couldn't do much about it. But individually, they each took a lot of action, a lot like each of us individually is taking action today. So first, Mala Amarsinge, who's in the top right-hand corner here, committed herself to using academic evidence to convince the government of the value of mangrove ecosystems. She used what's called ecosystem services valuation and was able to quantify how valuable mangrove ecosystems were, and in order to prove to the government that they needed to invest in protecting them. Next, we have Douglas Tisera and Anuradha Wickrasinghe, who are on the left-hand side of your screen here. They both worked together and rallied members to pursue arrests for illegal mangrove destruction and would actively steal boats of those who went and destroyed mangroves in order to prevent them from doing so. Both of them also developed a lot of government connections and would often invite government members to see the work that they were doing. Together, they started an organization called Sudisa. Their logo is in the middle here, where they particularly invested in educating women and offering them microloans so they could start businesses while educating their local communities on the value of mangroves. By educating women, they not only were able to get to whole families, but also to children and to schools, and to provide a new means of economic development. And finally, an important player here is Seacology, which is actually a United States-based organization that saw this incredible work and started to invest in it. So the story here is that a few individuals, I have 3 on the screen here, really saw the value and said, I don't need to just sit and worry about this myself. I'm going to go to the government and use my knowledge to influence what I want them to hear. Second, I'm going to take my skills and I'm going to share those with my community so that we can make a bigger collective impact together. That, I think, is really symbolic of what we're doing here. We have a lot of Prithvi Sevasanga speakers who are experts. We have this incredible opportunity to share with all of you, and together we're making an even bigger impact. Before we go on to creating tangible change, we'll watch a quick video so you can see Douglas Tisera, one of the people who started Sudisa, speak about his own work. All right, so now that we've gotten a more up-close look at the impact and the dedication of these individuals who have given their whole lives to protecting mangroves and the benefits that they provide to their communities, I wanted to make sure that we shared some of the biggest change that they were able to bring about in Sri Lanka. So first, through their education and economic support initiatives, they were able to prevent large-scale mangrove destruction and replanting efforts, much like our Plant One for One initiative that we had earlier on. They also opened museums and training centers, which had not only visits from government officials, but actually had their land donated by the Sri Lankan government. By getting involved in more than 14 districts across the entire country, they were able to get so much attention and bring so much positive information about mangroves and their protection that the government itself invested land in their efforts. And finally, through a cooperative agreement from SUDISA, the Sri Lankan-based organization, Seacology, the United States-based organization, and the Sri Lankan government, Sri Lanka became the first country in the world to formally protect mangroves in 2015. And even bigger, because of their continued work, the National Sri Lankan Mangrove Policy was officially adopted in 2020, which means mangroves being protected is now written into law in Sri Lanka and cannot just change at the whim of politicians. Part of Sri Lankan law means that mangroves have to be protected, and Sri Lanka is the first country in the world to have done that. So because of their work and because of the attention they were able to bring and because of how they grew, this small group of individuals was able to create a really meaningful change for their entire country. And because mangroves are so diverse and critical to Sri Lanka's ecosystem, I would contend that they have done the world a great service because of what they've protected in this small region of the world. So with that, that's kind of what I wanted to share for our presentation today. This is an example by which the initial connections that we had to the earth were exploitative. People in the 1980s were shrimp farming and were destroying mangroves. A couple of individuals saw those problems, especially during the 2004 tsunami, and were able to take action and slowly grew and grew until they got the government on their side and created a really big change. So today, we're going to take our collective action as a group and see how we can make a bigger change in government and political systems. And that leads us into our dynamics and discussion time. So let's talk about activism. For our dynamics today, what I'm going to do is offer 3 options to all of us. Each option is going to be a way that you can get involved to taking your individual actions, what you do with our community, and bring it to a bigger, more influential audience like a policymaker. Then we're going to split out into small breakout rooms, and we're going to discuss which option you think you can take first, which one feels approachable, why it feels approachable, and what your first step to doing it is going to be. So let's go through the options. Option number 1 is a big one. Write to a member of Congress, that's in the United States, or an equivalent representative in your country, wherever you may be in the world. I have a quick model of this, so I'll share that in the chat with a Google Docs link. So if you do choose option 1, you can use this model here. There's a link there for the United States Congress where you can find who your representatives are. If you're in a different country, I'm sorry, I don't know all of the resources for every country in the world, but I'm happy to help you find it if you need it. The second option is to engage with an activist organization in your community. All over the world, every single community has an organization that's working on environmental issues, food and farm issues, anything you can possibly imagine. So if they're getting involved with government and activism, you can always support their efforts either by donating your time, resources, and effort, as Vivekji likes to say. And finally, option number 3 is to organize or attend an event and invite influential policymakers to see the impact that you're making in your community. I know in our working session just before, we heard a lot of great work from Chinmaya Somnath and the rest of CMWRC, the Washington Regional Center, on a lot of the composting and other great work that their organization is doing. If your Chinmaya Center is holding a waste-free Deepavali or something like that, invite the mayor, invite a local board of aldermen member to come and see what you're doing so that they can see these issues are impactful and important to you. So 3 options, 3 different levels of effort, different levels of engagement. Which one do you think you can do? Why does it feel approachable? And what is your first step? And with that, we'll break out into breakout rooms. I can also share these options again in the chat, or you can quickly note them down before we go into breakout rooms, and you can talk with your fellow community members about the actions you're going to take next. And I will pass it to the team for that. All right. Well, I know the discussion I was in was really lovely because, believe it or not, we had 3 people in our group, and each person opted for one of the options. So all 3 of these things, I know at least in my group, I've heard that people are going to try. So it was really exciting to be a part of that discussion. Now, this is what I'm calling our satsang activism. Ideally, these 2 words go really nicely together. So I wanted to give a quick opportunity for anyone who walked away from their small group really inspired. If you want to share what your satsang activism is, how being in satsang, being in community here is going to inspire your activism with one of the options during the dynamics or any other option that you might have thought of as well. And Ritaji, Kanchanji, we can just use the hand raise function and have people unmute. Okay.
Yes.
If anyone would like to share. Put the 3 options up here again for anyone. Or sharing in the chat works as well. Ananya, please share with us.
Oh, okay, cool. Hariom. Yeah, we all of us stuck with option 2. But we were thinking about how do we narrow this down, and what we were discussing was regarding food waste. And I think a lot of us had similar experiences, either our colleagues in the office place or, like in my case, my neighbors who live in the same apartment complex as I do. Like, they generate this gigantic amount of trash every 3 days. I don't know how that happens, but it does. And a lot of it is boiled down to advocating for a more plant-based diet that is also less heavy on the processed foods. So making sure that we buy produce and we try to cook it at home rather than eating out or buying, for example, a bag of chips or something, which has a lot of stuff that goes into making it. And then when we do that, most of what we cook, any scraps end up going to compost. So then we generate such little trash.
Yeah, that's great. Both engaging with an organization and making lifestyle changes that hopefully inspire those around you, which is what we've all been doing for each other. Thanks for sharing, Ananya. We are at 10 o'clock, so I think we'll slowly wrap up here, but just wanted to reiterate that satsang activism is a real thing. Dedication to Devi is happening. We are a community that's taking individual action. We're tracking what we're doing as a community. And hopefully through this discussion today, you've gotten some ideas as to how you can take individual and community action and create political governmental change that actually changes things for our current generations and future generations as well. Like in the story of the Chila Lagoon, eventually protecting mangroves was written into law in Sri Lanka, which means that even when politicians change, even as people come and go in the country, that dedication to protecting mangroves stays in the country. It does not change. And so in my opinion, I work in Washington, D.C. in lobbying and activism for sustainable agriculture. And one of our biggest goals is to make sure that all the changes we want to see in agriculture and in how we deal with food in the United States is written into law regularly. And so it is possible. I work with people who are doing it every day. And with that, I think we have some time for Q&A. I'm happy to stick around for those who have any further questions.
Hariom, I have a quick question. Hamsa? So, I was in the group with Archana ji and Meena ji and Ananya, and, we were talking, all of us chose option number 2. I personally chose it because I have not been involved in this aspect of, indirect Prithvi Seva. And I felt like it was an easier option because, join an organization and then, learn from it. And also because of the protocols and everything, and then perhaps do number 3, or if one day have good writing skills, then do number 1 that you suggested. But for number 2, do you have any tips as far as finding something in our community, in my community? I'm in the West Coast community, and um, you know contributing, or do you have a model that has worked or something like that?
Sure. So I will say, in terms of a model specifically, I think the organization that you get involved with will have a model that works for them. So I think it'll just be molding to what's available. If you're in the West Coast, there's going to be a lot available. The western part of the United States, especially, is highly oriented towards and well-minded towards a lot of these issues. So narrowing down where you get involved, I think, will be one of the biggest challenges. And in order to do that, I think it's important to do like the first part of self-reflection, which is which of these issues is most important to me. You'll find, like, I work in agriculture, so food and farm organizations are always close to my heart. It's where I find it most easiest to get involved. I know earlier we saw someone who had shared in a group about a land trust organization that is preserving land to make sure it is available for nature preserves. And this organization leads hikes for children, field trips for children to give them educational opportunities. So if you're an educator, you might say like, oh, that's a place where I can get involved. You might find an organization that does cleanups. So they might do beach cleanups and all these things. So if you're like, I need a way to get exercise, I don't get outside enough, this is a great way, I can go do this. And so I think it'll be first to do the self-reflection aspect of like, what service can I offer? What is my capacity? And what is also interesting to me? Which might sound selfish, but the thing is, environmental issues are so big that you can find your place in them, which is really what's great. Once you do that, it's easier to narrow down what you can find. Another great way is if you have friends in this community or in your own community that you talk to environmental issues about, just sharing that you're interested in getting involved will give an easy opportunity to share, like, oh, I actually did this with this person last week. I did that with this group last week. So those are some immediate ways that you can just first narrow your search, and then a simple Google search for environmental organizations is a good place to get started. And then tapping into your community members and your friends and family who know and are passionate about the same things as you are a good place to start.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hariom. Thank you so much, Hamsa, for this presentation. It's been very insightful and educational, so props to you. I have a question that I'm not sure is how relevant it is, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Every time we go to the temple, I really struggle with the amount of milk and honey and other sorts of products that are used. And I was thinking about perhaps approaching the board members of the temple or the priest to sort of have a discussion about the importance of, not producing so much food waste, or perhaps, finding a different way. I understand that there's a ritualistic part of it, and but I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about how one could go about that kind of change.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the question, Yashna, and thank you. I am trying to only, as much as I can, follow the example that you and Kavitanti have set for this Prithvi Sevasanga presentations. So you all are the real rock stars, in my opinion. I will say I struggle with the same thing. The ritualistic practice of Abhishekam is really difficult for me as well. I will say, since being more involved in the environmental field, whenever I watch if I see an Abhishekam at a temple, I generally turn away. I don't participate, and I will walk away. If there's opportunities to donate, some people will sponsor an Abhishekam. I will never do that because I can see the impact of that action and I don't believe in it. I think you actually have a lot more insight into dealing with the issue than I do. I think taking a step towards educating and just asking, like, asking a priest, asking a temple board, temple community, like, would you be willing to hear me out on the impact of this? And would you be willing to discuss alternatives to it, right? I think the important thing that you mentioned there is we have to acknowledge the fact that traditions and rituals have been in place for millennia in our culture for a reason, and asking people to change them overnight for not a new issue, but for what has been an issue that's getting more attention in recent years is really important. So I think the easiest thing I'd say is I agree with your approach of it. I think it's worth asking, and even if there's a negative response, in my opinion, you've at least raised the issue, and hopefully it sticks in people's mind that at least one person cared, um, not only to acknowledge the value of the ritual, but to also see its impact as
Thank you.
I actually have a question for you, Hamza. I know you are in the agricultural and food division, so I don't know if this is pertinent, but this is something I wanted to share and has been on my mind for a while because we are coming into spring and a lot of animals are out of hibernation. I was been thinking about the critters that are crossing highways or agricultural land to get somewhere else, migrating, for example, foxes or mm, there's, a lot of salamanders and things like that that cross the road, and it's very dangerous for them at night. I know a lot of them do it at night, and it's hard to see them on the road, and people are driving and everything, so that's a danger for these animals. I was wondering whether there was a way that we could deal with that. I know maybe in Montana, and I think I read it somewhere in New York State, and I read it in a book actually in Braiding Sweetgrass. If anyone has read that book, where the author and her daughter go out at night and help these animals cross. They pick them up and bring them on the other side of the road. But I don't know if this is something. We could do something else with this. Bring more attention to people. If anyone here is aware of this or is in this section, then or in your department, Hamza.
Thank you, Kavitanti, for the question. The honest answer is I don't know. I generally don't have much experience in wildlife management, and ensuring wildlife safety is not something I've ever dabbled in. So I wouldn't want to offer an answer just out of my presumption. I will say from the time I've worked on agricultural fields in the Midwest, we did contend with wildlife a lot, and there were times when we'd have mice who would chew through. I was taking lots of measurements in fields to understand like water levels and um, other like nitrogen levels, all these different kinds of biological horticultural things related to agriculture. And what we often would do was use wires we'd set up monitors out in the middle of a field. We'd use wires that had multiple coatings with additional like felt on the inside, so that mice wouldn't actually chew into electrical wires right away. They would chew into like a felt first. So most often what would happen is they would tear that out and take it for a nest or something, and our wires were mostly intact. And there were times when we'd see like a deer had, trampled through our wires and grabbed them, but because there's so many layers, they generally wouldn't get affected. So we did take preventative measures like that. But this was a government office that was doing that work, so they had insight into how to do it. I'm sure there are communities that have dealt with the issue, but I personally wouldn't know. It's something I would go to Google first. So unfortunately, I don't know, but I'm sure that it has been dealt with before. It reminds me of like a children's show episode I saw as a kid where the kids built like a tiny bridge and a tiny tunnel under the road to help animals get across. I don't know how practical that is at scale, but yeah, that's a really valid concern, and I unfortunately don't have a better answer for you.
No, thank you for explaining that, especially what you are doing in the West as well.
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you.
I hope you all feel empowered to take your already immense dedication and put it towards an even bigger purpose. So with that, we'll close there, and Hari Om, thank you all.
Hariom, everyone. It seems like there were a lot of ideas being shared. The main announcement again is the new Dedicating to Devi challenge. So for anyone that just maybe had joined late or missed it in the chat, please do sign up for the challenge. The information is in the chat. We've also done a brief orientation in the beginning, which will be available for anyone else. Invite your friends and family to join. And for anyone that is a Balvihar teacher, please, we're requesting students to also join. Our goal is to get at least 500 people sign up for the challenge. So do spread the word. And if there are any questions for us and for the team, please email us. Our email is prthvi@chinmayniagara.com. So feel free to email us with any questions that you may have. I thank you everyone for joining. I think we'll wrap up for today and then look forward to seeing everyone next month. Hariom.
Hariom.
Thank you.